It's 2025. Yeah, I can't believe it either. And since it's a new year, we have a lot of albums that are turning 10 and celebrating 10-year anniversaries. The 2010s is a time period that we call the emo and pop punk revival. 2015 is literally the middle of the decade, so the middle of this entire revival. We're still at the height of bands like The Story So Far and Neck Deep, and honestly, those are still two of the biggest modern pop punk bands right now. I was in high school and college during the 2010s, so I was the perfect age for all of this music. So as we go through all of the albums, I'm going to give my perspective as someone who was there while all of this music was being released. Turnover, Peripheral Vision. So as of this recording, Turnover has already announced that they're going to be playing this album in full, and initially it was like 5 shows, and most of them were sold out, and just recently they announced that they're going to be playing, a lot more dates with this album, and I assume that those are going to sell out pretty quick too, so if they're coming to your city, I wouldn't wait around to get tickets. I know concert tickets are so expensive, but I wouldn't wait around because it's probably going to sell out. And, before Peripheral Vision, Turnover was still making noise. I mean, they had songs like Most of the Time, A Shiver, A Flicker and Fade. So they were a pretty clear-cut pop punk band, and then they changed their sound. They went more shoegaze, more atmospheric, but the smartest thing that Turnover ever did was when a lot of bands do interviews before an album comes out, and they say the words, "We're going to mature on our new album," and every single time a band does that, their fans get scared. It becomes a panic, like, oh my god, my favorite band is going to change their sound, especially the emo and pop punk scene. Even punk rock, it's like, okay, so we all fell in love with their first album, and now they're gonna do some like generic radio rock album to try to appeal to the mainstream. And the smartest thing that Turnover ever did was when they made that big shift in sound, they still kept their lyrics, for the most part, they're the same. They kept the topics of the songs the same. What they were singing about was still relatively the same. If you got into Turnover with songs like Most of the Time, Shiver and stuff like that, and you were, starting your first relationship, or you were starting to get a crush, or you were going through a breakup, or you were really starting to, get into your adolescence. When Turnover made that switch, their songs didn't become these vague word vomit kind of songs. They were still singing about love, relationships, breakups, all the things that are so synonymous with pop punk. So you had to change in sound, but you didn't really have a core change in what Turnover was talking about or singing about. And I think that's what helped Turnover still not become like ostracized by the emo or pop punk scene. Not to mention that the songs are so good and they were still catchy. And I know it's got to be hard for Turnover to be so defined by this one album, but I want to give them a lot of credit. To my knowledge, Turnover has never pretended that this album didn't exist, or go out of their way to not play songs from this album at shows. I mean, if you look at the Spotify like top songs for Turnover, I mean, it's no surprise that every single song is from Peripheral Vision. So I hope Turnover can kind of step away and see that this album is so beloved and so appreciated by everyone, and why all of these shows selling out, at least that first kind of like the 4 or 5 shows as this recording, those are the shows that have sold out, and I assume that everything else they announced is going to sell out pretty quick. So I hope Turnover can take a second and appreciate what they've done in creating such an iconic album. I'm a realist and an optimist, and I swear to you, I'm not getting over this. State champs around the world and back. If we're talking about state champs, I got to turn the hat around like a Pokemon battle is about to break out. Now, my history with state champs, I don't want to brag, but I saw state champs, the Shades of Grey era state champs, play in Chicago to like, 200, 300 kids in 2010, 2011. Again, I don't want to brag. And being honest, I'm more of a Finer Things guy. Around the World and Back is a solid follow-up, but I think Elevated is one of the best pop punk songs of all time, and Finer Things came out like at the perfect moment of like my youth and of my life, so I'm always going to have a lot of nostalgia attached to that album. And State Champs have been pretty consistent throughout their entire career too. I wasn't a big fan of the last album, the White Album, which I believe is self-titled, but Kings of the New Age I thought was still pretty good. Neck Deep, Life's Not Out to Get You, and I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to brag, but I saw Neck Deep's first U.S. show in Chicago, which might have been their first U.S. show ever, maybe, but it was definitely their first show in Chicago. I don't want to brag. I haven't seen anything about Neck Deep playing this album in full, but I feel like they have to, like it's inevitable. This is one of the most popular pop-punk albums in the last, 10 years, 15 years easily. I mean, it's an album that defined the entire 2010s, and a lot of people say, this album is a 10 out of 10, or it's, banger after banger, it's a perfect album. And Life's Not Out to Get You is pretty close. Can't Kick Up the Roots is one of the best growing up. I hate my hometown, but I hate it so much that I kind of love it because it made me who I am songs of all time. I've been wasting away, but in a town with no way out, there's not much else to do anyway. I mean, it's pop-punk perfection. December, obviously an iconic song, but other songs too, deep cuts like Gold Steps and Lime Street are great too. This entire album just captured the 2010s, and if you were there, you remember, prior to this album, a lot of people thought Neck Deep was just a ripoff of The Story So Far. But with Life's Not Out to Get You, once that album was released, you never heard anybody say that again. Seaway, Colorblind, an underrated band. Seaway never had their moment. I mean, they released their best album in 2020, and obviously through no fault of their own. There were a lot more important things happening in 2020, so no one was really paying attention to music that much, and we haven't really gotten anything, I don't think, from the band since 2020, so hopefully we get, whether it's new music or a tour. I just feel like they never really got to ride the success off of their best album. Man Overboard, Heavy Love. Nobody's favorite Man Overboard album, if we're being honest. Man Overboard is a band that has almost been, lost to time. I think more people remember the Defend Pop Punk logo than the band Man Overboard. That is the reason that we even have that logo. Man Overboard was so important to the entire 2010 scene, even disregarding the joke, or everybody thinks, the Defend Pop Punk logo was so cringe and everything. But first of all, as someone who was there, I mean, yeah, we made some jokes about it, but we all bought the merch. We all had the Defend Pop Punk logo flags hanging in our rooms and stuff like that. So don't let anyone ever tell you that the Defend Pop Punk logo was uncool or cringe, because when it was happening, nobody really thought that. And I think because Man Overboard hasn't reunited, there hasn't been that kind of renewed appreciation, or us kind of looking back at the legacy of Man Overboard, because when we talk about the 2010 scene, what bands that haven't reunited, what do we always talk about? Title Fight and Modern Baseball, but you gotta throw Man Overboard in there. Title Fight and Modern Baseball were very important, but so was Man Overboard, and they're a band that for whatever reason, hasn't reunited. I checked on their socials, and it looks like the singer of Man Overboard, as of this recording, is going on kind of an acoustic tour. He posted a message on Instagram that I think they were trying to get the band together, but scheduling stuff, it didn't work out. I think the backup, or not the backup vocalist, but the other singer in Man Overboard, I'm pretty sure is in The Story So Far, at least a touring member of The Story So Far right now, so I'm assuming that's a conflict, right? You can't, tour both. But I think if Man Overboard came back, I think a lot of people, maybe even Man Overboard, would be shocked about all the appreciation that they would get, not just in ticket sales and stuff, but just in the conversation online. Man Overboard was a very popular band in the 2010s. And the lead singer of Man Overboard, Zach, is putting out music under Zachary Ross and The Divine. Knuckle Puck, Copacetic. As someone from Chicago, I've seen the entire rise of Knuckle Puck, and as I'm recording, just a few days ago, they played the entire album in full in Chicago, and I've been hearing great things about that entire performance. Everything, all the videos I've seen have been really cool to see. As far as me and Knuckle Puck, I like a lot of Knuckle Puck songs, but I don't think I ever, had that one album from Knuckle Puck that blew me away. And I know Copacetic is that album for a lot of people, but it just wasn't for me. I mean, obviously, Untitled is, a top-tier Knuckle Puck song, top-tier pop-punk song, but I never just, got into this album as, as much as a lot of other people did. Real Friends, Home Inside My Head. I'm going to say a lot of the same things about Real Friends that I just said about Knuckle Puck. A lot of great songs, a lot of that EP, Everyone That Dragged You Here, is probably still my favorite release from the band, but with every album, it just kind of felt like there was just too much, a lot of filler. A lot of their albums I always felt were like so bloated, and you can easily make the argument that the newest Real Friends album with their new singer is their best album. The Wonder Years, No Closer to Heaven, a great follow-up to The Greatest Generation, and the Wonder Years are a band that doesn't get enough credit for playing what I would call mature pop punk. People always make fun about pop punk for just being whiny songs about hating your hometown and breakups and all that kind of stuff, but there are so many great pop punk bands and great pop punk albums that their songs are nothing about any of that stuff. And the Wonder Years, I've always felt, have always matured with their audience, and that's why they have such a great relationship with their fan base, and that's why they still have so many, hardcore fans, because they did mature with their audience. I mean, The Hum Goes On Forever is an incredible pop punk album that isn't about the typical, pop punk tropes and stereotypes. It's a great mature pop punk album. Hit the Lights, Summer Bones. Hit the Lights has been around forever, since 04, 05, and they are still a very underrated band. And for them to come back out of nowhere in 2015 and release a fast-paced pop punk album that's kind of like an easycore album is insane. And for a band that's been around as long as they've been, their #1 song on Spotify is Effed Up Kids from that album, Summer Bones, in 2015. That's just insane. 4 Year Strong, their self-titled album. After the Foo Fighters album, 4 Year Strong had something to prove, and yeah, they proved it. My hot take with 4 Year Strong is the best 4 Year Strong have ever sounded is on this album from track 1 to Who Cares. It is flawless. It's 4 Year Strong at their most 4 Year Strongest. It's great. The Story So Far, self-titled album. And I wish you'd just call. Oh, sorry. And I wish you'd just call, and we could hash this out, and I could tell you what I'm so mad about. You could easily make the argument that this is the best Story So Far album. I mean, this is peak screaming, angrily pointing your finger, The Story So Far. The Story So Far have always been influenced by hardcore, and this is the most intense the band has ever been. Smile, Heavy Gloom, Nerve are all great songs. Nerve is still the band's most popular music video. Handguns, Disenchanted, a band that nobody is really talking about in 2025. But trust me, the Don't Bite Your Tongue EP was very popular when it came out. So I checked in on what Handguns was doing, and as far as I understand, they are touring, but there's no original members in the band. The lead singer is doing his own solo thing right now. So, it's just an incredibly weird thing. They're posting on Facebook about trying to see if anybody can teach them the songs to play. So that's kind of weird. I mean, the whole thing is a weird situation. Again, if I've got it right. But I mean, I got the screenshots here. I don't know how else to interpret them. Like, it can't be a joke. What would be the joke here? It doesn't make any sense. But hey, I'm not making fun of them. I want to be clear. Like, if people are going to the shows, I mean, obviously people still want to hear these songs live. And if there's none of the members of Handguns want to be part of it anymore, then this is the best, you're going to get. If people are coming to the shows, then, I mean, obviously people want to hear these songs, and they still have a bunch of monthly listeners on Spotify. So it's not like people aren't listening to this band at all, but just an incredibly weird situation. But I want to make it clear, like, Handguns was a very popular band in the 2010s. Maybe they weren't at the level of your, Story So Far's or Wonder Years or Neck Deep, but Handguns was right there in that second kind of tier of pop punk bands. That's the entire list. All of these albums, again, are turning 10 years old in 2025. Let me know your favorite memories from these albums if you want to hear these albums in full, and let me know, because I'm sure I forgot somebody's favorite album from 2015, so let me know that in the comments as well. Please like the video, subscribe, tell all your friends, and thanks for watching.